Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week we're continuing on with more Goa stuff because you all seem to quite like that. So this is the project we had last week. There's no point reinventing the wheel, so I'm just going to keep the project base the same. And this week I'm going to create a Goa lead in Vital. So let's go and find our trusty Vital over here. Drag him in. And then just for housekeeping, move that across. Pre-master so you can hear it. And I'm just going to put in a fixed D3 because that's what the track was on. Let's turn off the delay. We certainly don't want that. Yet anyway. So obviously instead of individual notes, I just entered a single 1-bar MIDI note. So to add a bit of rhythmic life to it, let's assign this to level, turn it down, and then we're going to turn this up. I usually go to around 80, which is on now. Put this on sync. Take it to 1 bar, turn off smooth, and then we're going to put it on the down, like so. Turn this up to 16, hold down shift and drag it across. Now if we hold shift, and we can drag our little nodes up like so, we can drag them down or up. Let's go about there for now. Let's add just a tiny bit of unison. Let's go 2 voices perhaps. Let's turn the spread up. Now let's add some melody to it. So go to LFO 2, drag that to pitch up here, and we put this on to 12. We want 1 octave. Turn the X grid up to 16 because we obviously have 16 steps. And then we turn the Y grid up to 12 because we want to have 1 octave. Put this on sync and 1 bar smooth down. So now what we have is, if we put this on step, each one of these little blocks, if you like, is so the first step and the first note, or the second step and the, let's say, 4th note, for example. So that means because I put the root note in on D, that must be F sharp. So let's count them through. We have D sharp, E, F, F sharp. Let's just put something in completely at random for now so you can hear it in action. So we have the start of an arp now. Let's however turn this up to 24. And then obviously we're going to make our LFO depth 24. So now we have 2 octaves. And now if we find our middle point, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and draw a little line across. That should be 1 octave higher, so we're still in D. Let's just make sure of that though. Go to our tuner here. So I think I must have counted 1 too high. Let's take it down and drag that across like so. Now let's go across to our matrix, and then we're going to change this to bipolar mode. So currently it was on unipolar, which meant that down the bottom was the default, and then we had 1 octave and 2 octaves, like I said. But now by putting it on the center and changing it to a bipolar, this will be the bass, if that makes sense. And then we go down or up from there. So we're still on D. And we can go down and up. Let's now move this to 32. So we have 32 steps. We need to change, obviously, our MIDI because our MIDI is currently only 16. So let's put this on. When I say 16, I mean 1 bar. So let's put it on 2 bars, which is obviously 32 steps. And then one thing I didn't do is change this to 2 bars also. So now we have that, we can draw in our pattern. So typically we like to stick to 1 octave high and 1 octave low. And then to give it the goa feel, it's 1 note up and 2 down. And then you can maybe experiment with the occasional +5 or +7. And then we'll just duplicate that again. So we have 2 bars. So now we have a bit of a pattern going. Let's work a bit more on the sound. Let's turn it down an octave. We hold down Shift. We can scroll down a full octave. Let's assign the cutoff to LFO1. Now the really fun bit begins. Let's right click and copy, go to LFO3 and paste. Now we have it on LFO3 also. Let's also assign LFO3 to pitch. Once again, ensure that it is the same 24. Sync over 2 bars, smooth down. Now what's happening now? Let's turn this up to 32 also. And 24, so we can visualize what's happening. Now the reason why that sounds horrible is because it is essentially doubling the modulation. So LFO2 and LFO3 are simultaneously modulating the pitch. But what we want is for LFO2 to play first, then LFO3. And because we had it set to 32 steps, we're essentially going to have a 64 step or a 4 bar up. Let's go to our matrix. Let's turn oscillator 1 transpose bipolar on. Then let's go to LFO4. Put this on sync. We want that to be 4 bars. And then we'll draw in a triangle like so. Or a ramp if you like. Let's go LFO4. And then we're going to assign that to the depth of modulation slot 2, which is up here, which is the oscillator 1 transpose. So modulation 2 amount like so. While we're here, let's do the second one also, LFO4, and then we want this one to be modulation depth. Well, let's count them. So it is the 4th one here, modulation 4 amount. So now when we play this back, you can see the ARP stepping through LFO4. Like so. Then you can also see it stepping through linearly here. But instead of it going linearly, we want it to go abruptly from LFO2 to LFO3. So let's go to this mod slot here. And we're going to change the mod remap of this. So let's turn it all the way up and then all the way down for the second half. So when it steps through this LFO up to here, the midway point, it is at this midway point, which means that this has been remapped all the way to full. And then at the second half, it's been remapped all the way down to 0. And that is only for this modulation lane here. So let's also do the same for the second one. We're going to turn this all the way down to 0 and then all the way up for the second half. So the inverse is true. Once it gets to the second half of the LFO, it's at full for this modulation slots. We need to obviously increase the depth here. However, one thing you'll notice is when we turn this up, it goes up to 2. It's not in the same octaves like we had earlier, which makes it slightly more difficult. Only very slightly though. So like I said, it goes all the way to 2 on this depth, and the maximum depth is 96 semitones. So 96 semitones is 8 octaves, and then the maximum depth here is 2. So if we take 2 divided by 8 is 0.25. So every octave is 0.25, and we wanted obviously 2 octaves, so it's 0.5. So we go to here, enter value 0.5, and we'll do the same for the next 0.5, and then we turn these depths down to 0. The reason why we turn these down to 0 is because they're now being controlled by these slots down here. Otherwise, we'd be duplicating the modulation. So when we play this back now, you can see the modulation depth going to a maximum of 48, which means I obviously got my maths wrong. This needs to be 0.25. My bad. And there we go, now we have something. So actually that's a good way to check. Ensure that when these modulation depths go up, driven by these modulation slots here, that they're in accordance with what you expect. So now when we play this back, we should have LFO2 and then LFO3 playing sequentially. So LFO1, now LFO2. LFO1 now, and LFO2 now. Boom, there we go. So obviously they're still playing the exact same pattern, so let's mix that up a bit. Let's go to LFO3. Let's put on some effects. Let's go reverb, obviously. And then delay. It's already on 1/8 dotted. So there we go, just a bit of a Goa up within Vital. I hope you enjoy that, and I'll be back shortly with something else. See you then. Bye.